November Eugene Cascade Chapter meeting. Christy is going to start the recording, so for those that aren't able to attend, they can come back and watch our presenters today. I'm welcoming two of my esteemed colleagues today to present, Scott Clark and Sarah Ballini-Ross from SAIF Corporation, who are gracious enough to talk with us about ExoSuits and doing that, a pilot that SAIF helped do with a particular brand of ExoSuit, and they will be sharing a whole variety of information about that. With that, I'm going to kick it off to Scott to jump in. Unless, Christy, there was any other business information that I needed. Nope, we're good to go. So Scott and Sarah, thanks for presenting, and over to you.
Well, Jim, you weren't kidding, man. That was under a minute. Wow, thank you. And thank you, everyone, for the opportunity to be here with you today. I just want to say right off the bat, this is meant to be information for you. So if you have any questions along the way, do not hesitate to shout out, interrupt, use the chat box, raise your hand, or just unmute. Whatever is going to be easiest for you, please. We would like to make this as the most valuable to you as we can. So if you have questions along the way, do not hesitate. So what we're going to do today is share with you a little bit about ExoSuits, and let me start sharing this. Give me 1 second to get my screen all sorted out. Jim, can you see this okay?
You're looking good, Scott.
Excellent. Cool. Here's the agenda. And this is a loose agenda. We just want to give you a brief overview of ExoSuits in general. Want to share with you some of the results that we got from a learning launch that we did for ExoSuits over the past year, and then share out some of the key learnings that we got from that. But before we get too far, Sarah's going to share with you a little bit about the overview of what it is we do as a whole.
Yeah, so I'm sure most of you guys are pretty familiar with who SAIF Corporation is. We are Oregon's not-for-profit workers' compensation insurance company. We've been around since 1914. Our mission is to really keep rates low and keep workers safe, and our department has a unique vision. We, along with our partners, really work to make Oregon the safest and healthiest state to work in, and our division has allotted Scott and I this great opportunity to work in safety advancement and innovation. We're able to employ, I drank way too much coffee today. I'm just going to say I've been on Zoom for like 3.5 hours straight and had like 3 lattes. So I'm going to spit this one out again. We are a part of Safety Advancement Innovation, now known as Safety, Health, and Innovations programs. But we really look at innovative ways to assist policyholders in their injury reduction efforts. We do this by selecting meaningful problems and trying to identify a solution that could potentially be a part of the could answer that problem. And we try it out, and we don't really know what we're going to learn, but we go in with a learning mindset, and we partner up with our policy holders to do so. Which brings us to our learning launches, where we really deploy technology with our policyholders in real life environments. We had the opportunity with exoskeletons to work with 4 different policyholders, and that was really the key part of this. Is we know technology works in the laboratory. What we don't know about is how it works in the real world. And what this experience allowed for us to do is see how much employees and employers valued this opportunity to participate in this process. At the end of it, we heard messages like SAIF feels like they're a part of the family now. We are so excited to be a part of this pilot, by the same people who said this pilot was way more work than we thought we were signing up for. So it really was a 2-way partnership. We were learning just as much from them as they were learning from us, and it was a really goosebumps. Like working with these employees was really amazing.
Thank you for that introduction, Sarah. Very fast and latte powered.
Sorry.
I'm drinking water, so maybe. So here's the scoop. We always start out with the why. Why are we doing what we're doing? A lot of the times we use data for that. As we're all safety practitioners here, and the easiest information that we have available to us is reactive information. I know that's not cool, and it's not a leading indicator, but it's a really good lagging indicator. And in this particular case, it's a massive lagging indicator. Back injuries are a big deal for Oregon business. What we did is we did an analysis. I think we all naturally know that back injuries are a big deal. If you've been in the safety occupation for any length of time, you've likely seen several back injuries. And in our case at SAIF, over the past almost 5 years, we've seen close to 30,000 of those injuries. And really what makes it kind of rise to the top, obviously it's those number of injuries, but it's also the cost. Of course, that cost, the insured cost is borne by the insurance carrier. We all know about the uninsured cost, but when you just look at the insured cost of these, on average, they're $6,000. And the big one for me is, on average, if somebody has a back injury, they're off work for 17 days. That's a big number. And when we look at SAIF policyholders as a whole, across 50,000 policyholders, there's been almost 500,000 time loss days associated with back injuries, and about 5,300 employers that have been impacted like this, or by back injuries. So it became a really easy why statement. What's out there that we can leverage to better affect these types of injuries, outside of what we all know is the typical engineering, administrative controls and things like that? So we started looking into ExoSuits, and usually, most often, if you even heard the term before, it's like, it's usually in the context of science fiction. It's like, those things are real? You mean the autoloader in Aliens or Iron Man? Well, not quite. But here's the cool thing is, 5 years ago, this wasn't something that was talked about very much. It still isn't, but I tell you what, it will be. You're going to hear a lot more about this stuff over the next 5 to 10 years, and I'll show you why as we go through this presentation. But they have firmly exited the realm of science fiction, and now they are firmly in the realm of the industrial workplace. And we're going to give you some examples of what that is and how that is. So just a brief primer, because I'm going to assume that most of you probably have not worn an exosuit or an exoskeleton. There are two main types of these things. One is active and one is passive. Active is typically more what people think about with these. These are battery powered units. They allow you to be stronger than you normally would. They actually augment a person's strength. So what you're seeing here, right here, that is called the Sarcos XO Guardian Exoskeleton. And this is a real deal. I'm seeing some of your faces and see eyebrows go up. This is not fake. This is real. And if you would like to have one in your workplace, you can absolutely get one today, as long as you get $100,000 to lease it for 1 year and then give it back. So there is that technology out there, and it will scale down in price over time. But for the purposes of our pilot, we're like, yeah, we probably don't have $100,000 to outfit 40 people with exoskeletons. So we're looking more into the more popular versions of these, and honestly, the more accessible versions of the exosuits out there. And these are the passive exosuits. These do not make you stronger. All they do is they reduce the level of stress and fatigue on the body. And they tend to focus on three main areas. That's the lower back, the shoulders, and the knees. And decidedly, the back and the shoulders are where these things are the most popular. What you're seeing here, this is a back exosuit called the Suit X. This is another one called it's a shoulder exosuit by Exobionics. And interestingly enough, just in the past 2 weeks, I want to say, news was released that Exobionics has purchased Suit X. So we're already seeing some of these scaling opportunities within the industry right before our eyes. So these things tend to cost anywhere from $1,000 to $8,000. They have either elastic bands or struts, just like you've got on the hood of your car, the trunk of your car. When you open that up and you hear that shh sound like that, those struts are the same things that they use for these exosuits. So there are a variety of different kinds, but those are the most common. Does anybody have any questions at this point, just on exosuits in general. We're going to do a deep dive on one of them. Okay. And if Sarah is monitoring the chat box, just in case if anybody wants to throw anything out there, you can do that in there as well. Okay, so when we started out on our journey for exosuits, there were a couple things that we were looking for. First and foremost, we wanted something that was scientifically validated. There are a variety of suits out there, and if you go to exoskeletonreport.com, I've got this link for you at the very end. You're going to see dozens of exosuits. Not all are created equal and not all are scientifically validated. It was really important to us that this has been tested and validated in the laboratory. The other thing was that it was cost feasible. As I said before, they range from $1,000 to $8,000. That $8,000, I don't know about you guys, but it just seems like that's a big pill to swallow when you're talking about outfitting potentially dozens of employees. So more on the lower end is what we were looking for. And this is what we found was this HeroWear exosuit. And the last thing was the vendor partnership. It's really important that we didn't have any experience with exos prior to this, and we really wanted to develop a partnership with a vendor that knew what the heck they were doing. And we found this in spades with HeroWear. So in full disclosure, when you look at soft exosuits, when you search them in this $1,200 to $1,500 range, if you're anything like us, you're going to find two. There's literally only two on the market right now. That will change, two that we're aware of. That will change in time, but right now the options are fairly limited. You got HeroWear, and then you have another one called Oxivo, and they are out of Switzerland, and they don't have much of a U.S. presence right now. So it made it, we got lucky on this one, is I guess what I'm trying to say is because we've got it scientifically validated. We've got a person by the name of Matt Marino, who is the director of ergonomics for these folks. He is probably one of the most knowledgeable across the entire planet when it comes to exosuits. So, and then we got the scientific validation. This was built and engineered at Vanderbilt University in partnership with the National Science Foundation and the National Institute of Health. So there's all kinds of science that goes behind this. But what we're trying to find out is practical use, which Sarah will tell you a little bit some of our own practical use.
Yeah, so prior to putting the exosuit on policyholders, we had the opportunity to purchase a super fit kit at SAIF. So we had the opportunity to have this exosuit in our homes and on my farm since last August. I've probably worn the suit for over 100 hours at this point and have a lot of that firsthand experience of knowing the ins and outs. And you know, I'll be really honest, some of the really early pain points of the exoskeletons. I became titled the Queen of the Cone-Shaped Thighs. Like, that is a title I never thought I would get from working with a vendor, but that's just how close of a working relationship we had with our HeroWear vendor. As you can see, Scott found some really interesting uses for this exoskeleton. His wife loves it because he now does the dishes on a regular basis and doesn't experience any back pain.
Back pain free dishes right there.
Where I had a few more applicable uses on my farm. I really loved it for doing hay. I am super short. I am a pretty lazy farmer, I'll be really honest. And this thing is amazing for bucking hay. My husband yells at me because I don't like throwing a 6 tall, and this made me feel pretty dang good after the end of hay. Also, prolonged bending is a really great use for it. And so it was really helpful getting our hands on this technology firsthand. And having this experience is what really showed us the power of these learning launches, of equipping people with the technology and just asking them to try it and to play with it and to use it and to learn from it. And it was because of this experiences that when we were able to go on site with these employees, we could relate in ways that we couldn't have if we had never tried this technology before. We designed these learning launches really with the employees in mind. We were really interested in learning if employees felt assisted by the exoskeleton. How did it fit into their daily work? Does it work for them, or is it kind of a pain? And did they want to continue using it? So we deployed 40 exoskeletons across a multitude of different work sites in agriculture, construction, and retail. And we had 10 different employees per site. We ranged in ages from 16 to 62, from an employee who was 5'2" to over 6'5". and from 120 pounds to over 300 pounds, just to try to get a range of different people using the exoskeleton and learning how it worked for them. A big shout out to our policyholder participants. We could not have done this without them. We use data to find these industries. We were really looking to solve injuries around back problems. And what we knew is this exoskeleton was designed for retail and manufacturing and warehousing. What we didn't know is how is it going to work in construction and agriculture? And so we asked these policyholders to take a risk with us, to go on this journey of seeing how this exoskeleton could potentially work to reduce some of their back injuries that they've been working for years to reduce. And so what we landed on is we allowed our policyholders to identify the different use cases and employees that they wanted to test the exoskeletons. And so we're able to see a variety of different job tasks be able to have the exoskeleton be tested in. In construction, our concrete company really liked it for the mucking and the raking. You can see that in that bottom right-hand corner. Talk about a strenuous job. Early mornings, cold. It is so cold at 4 in the morning when they are pouring wet concrete, and the concrete pumping setup is just really labor intensive. And so we were able to really see some good uses for it. On the other side of construction, we work with a drywall company, and it's that big awkward lifting of the drywall sheets they really enjoyed. Framers tried it, but they ran into some issues with it, and so we didn't get a lot of framing usage out of it. In retail, it really shined for stocking and palletizing orders. This is where it was designed for. They used it in their repair shop where they assembled like ATVs and lawnmowers, and they had a lot of that bending for that. We had some really good stories from retail that Scott will share about in a few moments. And then in nursery, we ran into some timeline issues with the time of year that we tested out the exoskeleton and then being able to really find the right job task for it. We were able to use it on their potting line where they're potting up containers into larger pots, when they're pulling trees out of giant berms of sawdust, and during their shipping process as well. Now we get to watch a fun little video where we let the work talk for itself.
Well, we normally would, but I'm getting that nasty error that says the audio's out. So give me 1 second, folks. I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to minimize, maximize, and see if this is going to work. Give me 1 second.
While Scott's doing that, I just want to check in and see if there are any questions so far about what we've covered.
Well, I'm hoping the video will show us, I'm not clear how exactly it works. Is there heat? Is it, how does it reduce fatigue? Does it zap me with superpowers? What is it? How does it happen? So I'm looking forward to seeing that.
Yeah, if our video doesn't work, I will show you and talk you through it. But if not, we can let Scott do it in the video.
Let's hope this works, because this is a really nice video that our communications department put together. So Sarah, I'm looking at you to give me a thumbs up if you hear sound.
Feels good.
Excellent.
We use our backs for every job: pushing, pulling, lifting, bending, even sitting. So
I'm going to turn up the sound here. Every time I touch anything on my screen, the whole thing stops.
when back injuries happen, it's bad news. They can take you off the job, prevent you from staying active and healthy, and make everyday activities inconvenient and tiresome. And that's to say nothing of the potentially lifelong pain and discomfort they can cause. They're also quite common, especially in the agriculture, construction, and healthcare industries. In the past 5 years, strains and sprains have resulted in over 29,000 claims of back injuries by SAIF policyholders. The average injury cost almost $6,000 and caused an average of 17 lost workdays. These numbers are discouraging, to say the least. Luckily, there are tools to address the risk of back injuries in the workplace. SAIF's Safety and Health Innovations and Programs team explores innovative ways to assist policyholders in their injury prevention efforts.
We've had lately a rash of, muscle strains and sprains, and so we're just trying to think outside the box and do anything we can to keep our guys safer.
At SAIF, we have a vision to make Oregon the safest and healthiest state. But in order to do so, we need to take a different approach of how to prevent injuries.
Back injuries are the most common injury that we see
in the workplace. And exosuits are a new technology that really show a lot of promise in our ability to help prevent these injuries.
In a recent pilot program, the team partnered with 4 policyholders to explore the use of exosuits for the prevention of back injuries in the workplace.
HeroWear is a wearable assistive technology company. We make exosuits, specifically back assist exosuits for workers who bend and lift to try to reduce the risk for lower back injuries and chronic lower back pain. Exosuits like the Apex help reduce the risk for lower back injuries by reducing the amount of strain and fatigue in the lower back muscles and on the spine itself. They do that by channeling some of the forces that typically go through the spine through elastic bands in the suit, which act like artificial muscles and reduce or soak up some of that strain and fatigue.
All right, what we have here is the HeroWear Apex Exosuit, and it has 4 main components. Those are the adjustable shoulder straps, the thigh sleeves, and then you have the back plate with this adjustable clutch right here. And where the magic happens is you have these elastic bands. And the way that the suit works is when you are just working as normal and you do not want the assistance of the suit, then this clutch remains free and allows you to move as you normally would. However, when you would like to engage the suit and the assistance of the suit, there's this switch here that allows you to click the suit on. And as you can see, as I bend down, that clutch is engaged, and so are the elastic bands here. So as you go down, that offloads pressure on the back, and as you come back up, it assists into the standing posture. What we know about exos is that they've been developed in a laboratory and proven to reduce stress and strain on the body. But what we didn't know was, how do these suits work in the real world? And do employees like them? And are they willing to wear them?
In order to learn about using exosuits in the real world, we started learning launches, where we outfitted employees with exosuits to allow them to test this new and emerging technology at their daily jobs and provide us firsthand feedback based on how this suit worked for them.
While continued use of the exosuit will probably be limited to certain situations, almost all users reported improvement on the strain on their back. At the pilot's conclusion, workers reported a 73% reduction in lower back discomfort and an almost 30% reduction in effort.
It just relieves the stress of lifting, going down low. It helps you back up.
Very comfortable. Especially in like certain positions when you go all the way down, you can really feel that stretch and it feel like it's really helping you out.
The first person we put in the exosuit was the one I was worried about the most. Like, I thought this guy was gonna hate this thing. He was gonna throw it in the dumpster after 2 hours. And the feedback I got from him was 100% positive. He loved this thing and wants to wear it every day.
Definitely my lower back would be where I noticed it the most, just because I also, I have back pain, but I go to the chiropractor, that kind of thing. So it definitely helped out quite a bit.
The suits are awesome if you have chronic back pain and injuries. It's the difference between functioning the next day and going out and enjoying your personal life on the weekend, like going golfing or hiking, whatever it might be, and actually being able to physically walk.
It does reduce fatigue on the muscles. I mean, my back doesn't hurt near as bad when I get home.
We're still learning what the use of exosuits in the workplace will look like, but this pilot has taught us one thing for sure. Partnering with businesses to explore tools will help us identify the best innovations to keep workers safe and healthy.
Our company's always tried to be at the forefront of safety and try to do the right thing for our people, so I think it's worth it in the long run.
All right. Now we're going to share with you some of the results, but before I do that, I just want to take a moment here to stop. Does anybody have any questions on the suit itself and how it works? Did that do a pretty good job of explaining what everybody needed to know or wanted to know on the operation of the suit?
I have a question.
Please.
My name's Chris. I work with Sub, and I'm just curious about the longevity and the applicability of the suit in dirty settings. A lot of these workers seem to be in clean environments, but we do a lot of construction. So if they're getting muddied up, would they still function the same?
Yeah. So
Yeah. Right now, I live on a farm. So that was one of the things we were really interested in testing, is we knew these were designed for a warehouse. A warehouse is a much cleaner environment than a concrete construction company or a nursery where you're playing in potting soil all day. The clutch, right? Like this is the one spot where you could have issues if you were getting stuff on it. We didn't run into any of those issues in the pilot. These thigh sleeves are pretty easily machine washable, and that's where it comes in. But to be honest, most people just wipe them down at the end of the day. Very few people, we saw some pretty dirty suits, but not many people were talking about washing them on a regular basis.
Yeah, we could tell by the way they smelled. No,
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Sounds like
a football locker room.
That's right. Actually, I didn't find too many sticky ones, but
that's
you know, the on the construction side, yeah, we didn't see, we saw some failures, which we're going to tell you about, but it had nothing to do with the conditions of the workplace. It had everything to do with the design of the suit, which they changed. So on that concrete site, I mean, you want to talk about dirty. If anybody's been around concrete, pouring concrete, these things got wet concrete all over them, and then they'd get wiped down and they work fine. So yeah, could there be something, you know, with dirt or grime that would get into them? We also saw them used in rain a lot in that in the nursery environment where it was pretty dirty, and yeah, didn't see any ill effects. Not to say that there wouldn't be, but we didn't experience any. And there's really what Sarah showed you there on the back is that clutch. That's the only real mechanical moving part that would be affected that I can think of, and that's sealed up pretty good. So
okay, cool, thank you.
No problem. And that's actually, this is a good time. I'm skipping ahead here, but one of the things that we found was that clutch in the back, especially for people doing maintenance, if they had to get down on their back, it was really uncomfortable. So that thing would stick into their lower back. Yeah, you can see that it sticks out about 2 inches. So that's something to consider too. And we're going to go through some good use case fits and some not so good use case fits towards the end of this thing. Great question. Any other questions at this point? All right, here we go. So that video paints a really rosy picture of these things. And Sarah and I are here to balance the video and give you, yes, there were some great experiences, but there were also some experiences that weren't so good. And we want to give you the complete picture of this thing. So the first question was, did users feel assisted? Pretty easy to say yes. This was a subjective questionnaire that all the employees took, the 40 employees, over the course of 6 to 8 weeks, where they were asked about their perceived effort in a variety of different tasks. And here's what we found, is that overall perceived effort from when they did not use the suit prior to this study, and by the end of this study, after using it for 6 weeks, we saw a pretty significant reduction in that perceived effort, like how hard are you working during the day. We saw a massive reduction in lower back discomfort. And then we also saw a reduction in when you were lifting heavy stuff. How did this work? Well, it was a pretty significant reduction in that too. So what are all these graphs telling us? Basically this, that the exosuits made many tasks easier, and they resulted in less pain. And that less pain thing, this is the cool part when you're out here doing these type of studies, is that you get to talk to the people that are using them and about their actual experiences. And that one guy at the end that you saw in the black shirt in the shop, where he said, I didn't hurt near as bad at the end of the day. There's an awesome story. Well, actually, there's a horrible story that's behind that, which had an awesome outcome of the exosuit. That was a logger, lifetime logger that works, outside in the woods, fallen trees. And over a decade ago, I think it was, he was falling a tree. Something went wrong. Tree landed on him, broke his back really, really bad. So much so that he couldn't go back to logging. And his back has just hurt ever since. Like, he's in constant pain. And it was one of those things that after 2 weeks of wearing this thing, he was like, that little clip that he said, I didn't hurt near as bad at the end of the day, that he had a longer story that went behind that. Like, I get to go home and sit on the couch and not have to fidget around to find one spot where I'm not in pain when I'm hanging out with my wife and kids. And that's, my goodness, from a safety standpoint, you know, as a safety person, you're trying to affect that kind of change all the time. So it was just really cool to see that type of change inside of 6 weeks. Did it have that same impact on everybody? Nope, it sure didn't. So we're gonna paint the other side of the picture here. Did the exosuits fit into the daily workflow? Mixed bag. Sometimes it did, sometimes it didn't. And I'm seeing a question here on does the exosuit have a effect on the muscles? I will absolutely answer that one. I'll do that on this next slide because that's one of the most popular questions that we get. What are some of the challenges that we saw? Initially, the suit design. This is a startup company. We make no bones about it. This is a new industry, and people are making discoveries every day on these things. And what we discovered on this one throughout this study was they had some issues with the stitching on the suits, which caused some of these straps to break. The thigh straps that you wear around your thighs. Sarah was talking about the cone-shaped thigh. She's giving herself a hard time on that. Initially, they said, well, it's due to the shape of the thigh that has that more conical shape that these things would fall down. What we found is, no, they fell down on everybody. And that was a pain in the butt, honestly. It was just an absolute pain. They made some real-time changes to these things that basically added a stirrup or a strap to the side that you just clip on. And all those falling issues were taken care of. Sarah showed it to you right now. It just kind of clips to your belt, and that made all the difference in the world. And it's unfortunate that one of our policyholders got the brunt of that one. And I think you'll see that in some of the studies here. The last thing was that shoulder straps. They were a little bit more narrow and didn't have enough padding. They've since changed that. Sarah's showing it to you in the window right now. They made those straps wider, and they also put more padding in them to make them more comfortable. And lastly, the bands, that elastic band that you see on the back of that suit, they were too strong in some cases. So the bands that they originally came with were either strong or extra strong. And what Sarah is showing to you right now is a medium band. So that is for the work that isn't as heavy. It's more like posture work. If you're bent over a lot during the day, or you just don't need a lot of assistance, then they now have a new band that fills that gap.
Yeah, really dynamic work is where that medium band shines. Is if you're moving a lot, it really relieves a lot of the pressure that we heard that people were complaining about on their shoulders from the stronger bands.
Yep, for sure. So that initial suit design changed from beginning to end, but the initial one, not so good. It's light years better, better now, pardon me. The other thing that we found is certain PPE and certain gear conflicted with the suit, almost exclusively fall protection. It did not play well with fall protection. So that's something to keep in mind, especially on the construction side. That I personally, if you're wearing fall protection, I would just say skip it. I wouldn't even mess with it. Not only because of a conflict standpoint, but from a legal standpoint, that makes me a little nervous as a safety practitioner. And then also there are certain gear, certain tool belts that if the tools were situated across the lower back in the middle, that would cause some conflict with the band. So that's just something to be aware of with these things. The big one also was heat and sweat. So this is the deal where, oh, sorry, my computer just likes to randomly go forward, probably because I'm talking too much and going too slow, so I apologize. Heat and sweat. So if you've not worn a backpack before, you're not used to this kind of stuff. When you wear a backpack, your back gets sweaty. That's all there is to it. It doesn't even matter if there's a lot in it. You get sweat when you have that contact on the back. And that's what we saw. Go figure with this thing. But honestly, it was one of the complaints too. They were like, it's just too hot. Well, we also tested this in the hottest summer on record. So that's something to be aware of, that some of these results were flavored by the temperature that it was outside when we did it. But even then, even when it was in a cooler environment, people still talked about the sweat and the heat that was caused by this. And then the last thing is access. If the suit, what we found was, and maybe future iterations will change, but what we found was most employees did not put the suit on in the morning and take it off when they left work at night. They would grab it and they would wear it when they needed it, and they would take it off otherwise. It only takes, well, here where it says, what is it, Sarah, 30 seconds on, 10 seconds off?
60 seconds on. It's realistic with the belt and the thigh straps.
Yeah, it's more, it does take a minute to put it on. It comes off real quick, but here's the deal though. You know, that seems like a little bit of time. It was enough that it impacted people's likelihood of wearing this. So, and we can go into some of the implementation best practices around this too, but just know that if the suit wasn't close by, if an employee had to walk, you know, more than 10, 15 paces to get it, they wouldn't. It needed to be right there with them. On the success side, those design improvements that we talked about, that was a huge success, made a huge difference in employee satisfaction. We also found throughout the duration of this study is that we found some really good refinement on where these things really fit good and where they didn't. And we'll share with you some of that more specifically at the end. But in general, that prolonged bending or ground level work, you could see the sheet rockers in some of that video where they were down nailing and taping down low, worked really good for that kind of stuff. And then also just lifting heavy stuff or repetitive lifting, that's where it shined as well. And lastly, this was one that we did not intend on at all. We were not looking for this discovery. It just happened. We just discovered it. We basically, with all the folks that we worked with, we talked to the employers ahead of time and said, hey, if employees want to take these home, because we provided all the suits. So I can't remember if you said that in the beginning, Sarah, but we bought all these suits for the employers. They got to keep them at the end of this. So we also said, hey, if an employee wants to take this home and use it, we're cool with it if you guys are. And everybody took us up on that. Well, this was, I think, in April, or I can't remember exactly when it was, but remember the big ice storm, especially for everybody in the valley. Sarah's February. Sorry, February.
Days without power. Very familiar with that.
Yeah, we had lots of trees go down. And so then there was lots of people out there with chainsaws, lots of people out there with axes, and you were moving wood around, stacking wood. We had a whole bunch of employees take these suits home to use with those activities. They loved them. They actually, I think that we weren't specifically looking for this, but anecdotally, we heard so many stories of this is like, wow, people really love to use them at home. When was the last time as a safety person that you provided a piece of PPE that someone says, I want to take this home and use it? For me, I was just like, holy heck, I don't think I've ever seen that before. This is awesome. So that was one of the big successes that we saw. Here's the money question for us is, yeah, this is all cool, but do people actually want to wear it? We're not at the point now. There are some exosuits, like with Toyota, for example, where they require the use of exosuits for certain jobs. I don't see that necessarily happening right off the bat with these things. So you got to kind of rely on an employee's desire to want to wear it. So we asked them, when all this was said and done, when we're not there with cameras and questionnaires and all that, are you going to keep using this after we go? And here's what we found. 53% were actively interested in continuing use. Now, this isn't the employer. This is directly from the employees. So we had a little over half that said, yep, I want to keep using them. We had 14% were like, nah, take it or leave it. If it's around, I'll use it. If not, I won't. No big deal. And then we had 33% that just said, nah, I'd rather not use it. Well, when you look deeper into who were providing those answers, it really paints a different picture in here. Retail, you can see that was at Coastal. So I'm pretty sure everybody's probably been to Coastal at one point or another if you live in Oregon. Almost all those folks basically said, yeah, I want to continue to use this. Construction, mixed bag, that looked more like the overall average, but really, if we peel this layer a little lower, it comes down to use case on this. And we'll talk more about use case, but you can see construction, you had more that were on the fence of take it or leave it. But there is an argument to be made that if people are neutral, that could be considered a positive response, because if they were like, if it was there, I'd use it, but if not, no, that could be considered a positive response. So keep that in your mind's eye when you look at this data. It looks a little different, but we want to be real transparent with the experience employees had with this. Last but not least, the nursery, you could see it just didn't work so well there from an employee standpoint. This is also the place where we had all of the suit malfunctions with the stitching. We had a whole, like 9 out of the 10 suits did not make it through the duration of the study without breaking at some point. That has since changed dramatically. They changed their manufacturing process. I think there was a question about durability on these. Think of it like a high-end backpack. It's like that kind of ripstop materials is like what this stuff is. It's pretty burly. The bands on the clutch, I think would be the most apt for, to wear down over time. They come with is it 1 year or 2 years? 1 year, yeah.
I think actually the place that we've seen the most failures is the simplest part, the Velcro. This is where it wears out the quickest, and that's where putting it on and off, like you can see mine, it's about toast, and I've worn it, I'm a weekend warrior farmer, so I don't wear it 40 hours a week like a normal employee would, but they do have a really easy 1 year warranty. And then after that, you can buy just individual replacement parts. That makes it a little bit easier to maintain.
For sure. And I'm just seeing now too, Christy had a question about high vis vest. Can you use it with those? You can, but the thing is, I would imagine with a high vis vest, you'd want that over, not under the suit. And you'd have to, it's more of a sizing thing at that point.
Our Whitaker Ellis folks, they had to wear high vis, especially on pour days. And the only area that it came into was the strap. It just was a little bit hard to reach under the vest and access the strap, but it wasn't too big. At the nursery, they really, they wanted to wear their rain protection over it. And we found that did not work well because of the elastic bands of the rain protection. They would interfere with the bands, but a safety vest didn't interfere like that.
Yep, that was a really good question. Really good question.
Can I ask you a different question?
Please.
So one of the areas I have a little bit of concern about back injuries is with our auto mechanics. And so when you were talking about that, with their above the vehicle bent over, it sounded like the not as whatever the term was for the one with a little bit less pull on the shoulder would be an appropriate exosuit to try with them.
Yeah. Definitely. Well, there's two, and this is where I'll jump right to the end of this. This is where if anybody at the end of this call afterwards would just like to discuss use cases in general, Sarah or I would be happy to do that with you, because that question, yes, with a medium band, that would be good for working if you don't have a lift. If you're working with a vehicle on the ground and you're working bent over on the engine, yeah, this could be a good use case. The only thing is, if you've got a lift and you're working overhead, that's where this thing isn't going to do you a lick of good for that. But some of these shoulder exos might. As a matter of fact, that's Toyota's use case for shoulder exos, and those folks, they went from dozens of shoulder injuries on a, I think, quarterly basis to 0 after they implemented these things. Those honestly, out of all the use cases for exosuits, shoulders for me are one of the strongest ones. So anyhow.
Excellent. Thanks.
Yeah,
I appreciate that.
No problem. You got it. All right. So here's one other thing. We collected all kinds of information from employees along the way, just about their perceptions of the suit. This is a super interesting one for Sarah and I, because when we asked them, do you think this thing's going to help you prevent injury? 80% said, yep, I think it's going to help me prevent injury, which is astonishing to me in and of itself. But then when we asked that question of, do you want to keep using it? We had that 53%. So it's like, we've got this cognitive recognition that this thing most likely is going to help me prevent injury, but not everybody wants to use it. So that's just more of something to chew on. We think that has something to do with comfort. I think that would be the obvious conclusion on that is, well, yeah, it could help me prevent injury, but man, I don't want to wear it because it's uncomfortable. But that's just something to keep in mind, is that there is recognition from employees that, yep, I think this is actually going to help me prevent injury, which again, in the safety profession, that's one that's like, wow, people are actively saying that. That's pretty cool. So in general, here's the big picture, some of the learnings that we got through this. First and foremost, Exos, they show promise. Are they perfect? Heck no. Do they have room to evolve? Absolutely. But man, this is the first, if this is the first presentation you've been to on Exos, my guess is you're going to see many more of these over the next 5 years. It just makes sense that now that there's an opportunity here that we have to help prevent injuries that just never existed before. And that, as Sarah was saying in the beginning, that's a lot of what we're looking at is, what are the new emerging technologies that are coming down the pipeline, like drones, like virtual reality training, like augmented reality glasses that you can wear, that are going to impact injury prevention in ways that we've never had the ability to before. So we see big promise in Exos in the future. We found that use case was paramount. If you put this on somebody that was a dumb use case, like there was one, I'm just going to come right out and say it. There's one where we had someone doing a I'm not going to give you the specific one because I don't want to out the scenario here, but it was a specific use case where they were doing very light finger type work and barely bent at the waist. It's like, well, yeah, they're going to hate it. It's not doing anything for them. So use case is really, really key, is making sure that you're putting suits on people that it actually fits with that job that they're doing. And again, this is where Sarah and I can come in and help out with that conversation. We found that it's a tool, just like a hammer. You're not using it. A carpenter doesn't use his hammer 100% of the day. He's got it in the tool belt and he uses it when he needs it. Same thing with an exosuit. You use it when you need it, otherwise you take it off. Implementation, it's not just like giving someone a hard hat or a pair of safety glasses. It requires some training and education and monitoring and feedback and tweaks. So it is not just a give it and go. There's some work that goes along with this. And lastly, we found really significant engagement value in this. When we started to ask employees, and this was it was an ad hoc set of questions that Sarah and I were asking through these exit interviews. And it was just kind of like a final question of, hey, so what'd you think? What'd you think about participating in this pilot? I can't tell you how many times we heard the word proud. Even for people that didn't like the suit, they want one. Sarah, tell your story on this one.
Suit. There was this one employee at the nursery, and we asked him, what was your favorite part about the exoskeleton? And he said, the box, so I can send it back to you. And then when we asked, so what was your experience like to participate in this pilot? He absolutely loved it, and he was so proud to be able to contribute and to share feedback and to have the opportunity to make a difference, even though he absolutely despised wearing the suit. And that's one point I'd probably add to this key learnings is employ enthusiastic volunteers. We saw a difference in how our employees were selected, and it did make a difference whether or not they chose to be a part of it or if they were given the opportunity to wear the exoskeleton. Yeah. And then we also saw a couple additional learnings around how the exosuit really supported that posture awareness. We saw some alignment with our safety in motion training. One of our sites is a really big user of safety in motion. And as soon as their employees put on the exoskeleton, the very first moment from the fitting, we would hear phrases like, wow, this really helps keep me in the green zone without even thinking about it. So those were some additional learnings I just wanted to share.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Those are really important ones too. And I think this is just a good lesson for all of us, for all safety professionals out there, is that I know we all know this, but I'll throw myself under the bus here. I don't do it all the time. Is just include employees in that decision-making process and ask them for feedback. It's the simplest thing in the world, but my goodness, the engagement value that we saw out of that was massive. And there was no other time where you'd actually be asking people, what do you think about this experience? It was, so I don't know, maybe that's another thing to throw out for all you folks on the call is see how you can inject that type of interaction in what you do every day. Because it was, we saw a demonstrable difference there. I'm going to go through this just real quick because I know we're short on time. Good fit profile. Here's what we found were some of the elements that made for a good fit for these suits. One, this isn't the first place that you start. That's what we found real quick is if the folks that have already tried to control ergonomic hazards in the workplace actively works better with those in those environments. I would never ever recommend that this is the first place you go, that you don't go straight to an EXO when it comes to trying to solve for back injuries. It's actually one of the last things that you do. Having someone assigned as the pilot, usually these things, it's not, I wouldn't imagine many of you on this call are going to go out and say, wow, that looks cool, give me 20 and then just go buy them and try them. Now you're probably going to do it on a smaller scale. Get a couple of them, see what people think, see what use cases it works in. When you do that, it's really important that you have a program manager for that. Again, Sarah and I can help anybody out that would like information on how to do that. We'd be happy to. Again, going back to the established ergonomics program, that's really important. Low turnover and budget. So these things, technically they're a custom fit. So there are several different shoulder strap sizes, several different lengths of bands, several different sizes of thigh straps. Can you share these suits between employees? Yes, but with a big old asterisk. If they're really close in size, yes, you can do that. But if they're not, then you're talking about having different parts and pieces and different suits. So that's where budget comes in. Yes, they're $1,200, which seems like a bargain when it comes to a back injury costing $7,000 and then having an employee gone for almost a month. But it's just, man, the cost could add up on these things. So that's just something to keep in mind. Operationally, heavy or repetitive lifting. That's kind of the sweet spot for these things. Extended times in a bent over posture, they work really good. Tasks that you're not walking around a big job site, because when you walk a lot with these, you get more rub and chafe and things like that. So it's if a person is working more in a defined area, it's an easier fit. And then climate control. If you're outside in the summer, I don't know. I don't think many people are going to say, "Yup, I'm going to wear that thing when it's 90 out." They're not going to wear it. So climate-controlled environments or wintertime tends to fit better. And then what's the not so good fit? We already talked about this. Fall protection and conflicting PPE. You can see it right here. Where are those bands? They are right behind this belt. It just it's not going to work good in that type of scenario. Already talked about hot environments. And then actually, Christy, when you were asking about your mechanics working on rigs, my first thought was snag hazards. I once had a mechanic. So I've been doing the safety consulting thing for like 25 years and worked with all kinds of different industries. And I once had a mechanic, car mechanic at an auto dealership, had a ponytail who always kept that ponytail on his back. I see it, Christy. And it's exactly what you think happened. He's leaning over, the ponytail fell right into the alternator belt and bonk, and he got a good concussion off of that. Whereas there's not a whole stuff that hangs off of these things, but when you tighten the straps, there is some strap that could be up to a foot long or so that would hang off. If you don't wrap that up and kind of band it, then that could hang out. So those snag hazards, it's something to be cautious about with these suits. There's also one other one that it's flexible metal cable that goes up and over the shoulder that sticks out a little bit. So if you're walking along, that could snag onto something. So I'm thinking more about construction sites there. Was it a deal breaker? Absolutely not. But it's just something to be aware of. And in closing, ExoSuits, I already alluded to this. These things do not for 1 second replace the hierarchy of controls. They're at the bottom. They're still at the bottom. You still go through the elimination, the substitution. You guys all know the drill. I have a sense though that in some circumstances people will go straight to the Exo because it feels like the easy button. But here's where I see this work is when you've got an engineering control that you know is going to help reduce exposure, but either it's just like that's not in the cards at all from a financial standpoint, or you just simply don't have the cash flow. It's like, yeah, we're going to do that in 5 years, but right now we don't have that 200 grand for the engineering control. That's really where I see these ExoSuits kind of bridge the gap between the two. They're a real nice solution for like, you know, in the time that it takes you to discover those controls, and maybe it's going to take a couple of years. Man, these things, that's the cat's meow for these. If you would like more information, we've got these resources for you. You can go directly to HeroWare at herowareexo.com on any of this. Exoskeleton Report, that is a not-for-profit site out there that has all kinds of information on exosuits. And then you got Sarah and I. Are we experts in exosuits? No, I wouldn't say so. But man, there's not. But we know them. We probably know more than most at this point. And I will say that it's more about implementation of these things. It's about finding the right use case. And then it's about when you find a use case that works, its rollout of these is really, really important. We've done it the wrong way, and we've discovered what is the wrong way, and we've also discovered how do you do it the right way. And we are more than happy to help with that type of stuff. And we will have a website page for exoskeletons on our site sometime soon, but right now we have this handout. It's very general. It just tells you a little bit about what they are.
And if you're eager to try an exosuit, we have a super fit kit, and we are able to come out and show you the exosuits and run through some job tasks. We're super excited to have that opportunity now in Oregon, because it's hard to know about an exoskeleton until you can kind of touch it and feel it and see how it would work with your employees. So if you're interested in that, feel free to shoot us an email at safetyinnovation@saif.com, and we'd love to follow up with you.
We'll see if people have any last questions. We're about out of time. Want to thank Sarah and Scott for both presenting today. Really appreciate it. And then just another reminder that I probably should have mentioned at the beginning. We will be meeting for our December meeting, likely moving it up a week to December 14th at noon instead of doing it on the third Tuesday like we usually do, because that would fall during the holidays, our holiday week. So look for a calendar invite soon for that meeting. But thank you again, Scott and Sarah. I've got about another 2 minutes. Any last questions for Scott and Sarah?
No questions, but I just wanted to thank you for the presentation. I'm like super excited about the possibility on some things that feel like impossible to solve, especially me hearing about back injuries at being part of the business in some places. So thank you so much for coming on short notice and doing this today.
Heck yeah, our pleasure.
Awesome.
While we got 1 minute left, I'll give you the quick and dirty answer to the back belt question. Nothing like a back belt. Doesn't atrophy muscles. There's been studies on this, and totally different animal. Muscles are still fully engaged with this thing. You're giving them just a little bit of help.
Yeah, I presented with the innovation officer from HeroWare last week, and the way he kind of talked about the exoskeleton assistance is thinking about running, right? If we run 40 miles a week, our calves are going to be one shape. If we change that to 20 miles a week, and we have a 50% reduction, we're not going to see a 50% reduction in our calves. And that was a really good visual for me of like kind kind of how an exoskeleton works. And I've worn it, you know, on and off for over a year. And at the end of the day, I can tell if I don't wear it. I do notice that I'm more tired, but if I don't wear it, I don't notice like I can't lift. I don't feel like I don't have the same capabilities. I'm not as sweaty either.
Thank you, everybody, so much. If you have any questions, you know how to reach us.
Thank you all so much, and hope to see everybody again for our next month meeting in December. Have a great rest of the afternoon, everyone. Bye.